Hello everyone, welcome to Pixelated Perfect. Super excited today. We are live in New York City together. This is Anthony Conta. So this is Anthony, your second time on the podcast, which is very, very exciting. And one of the big reasons you are back on the podcast is because you are coming out with a book.
That's right. Yep.
August 3rd.
Yeah, it comes out very soon.
Yes, and the title is
The Art and Science of UX Design.
Yes, and so we're going to get into all the details because I'm super excited to dive deeper with you. But I just wanted to kind of catch up with the audience. So where we left off from our last podcast when we were chatting was you talked through your career. So you had a non-traditional path into product design. One of the things that I remember very vividly was like you kind of started your own gaming company, right? So that was super fascinating. Maybe we could do a quick little background on that. And you did a boot camp and basically you rapidly moved your way up. You really found your footing in the product design space. And so we left off where you had just started a new role as senior designer at Amazon Music.
That's right, yeah.
And so it's been a few months since then.
Yep.
So I wanted to kind of dive a little deeper into how that's been. And I know another big thing that's been happening in your life is that you are going to be teaching at Pratt Institute.
That's right, yeah. Teaching at Pratt Institute right here in New York City, just a few blocks away, actually. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you're going to be teaching like a design course.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Much like writing the book, like I'll be teaching a course with like similar materials of like learning product design from 0 to 1 and like how to do, the thing that I do every day.
Right. And I think something that's like, one of the reasons I kept in touch with you and I love the podcast that we had is like, you came from like a background of starting junior and you worked your way up and you're a mentor and you're teaching and you're passionate about it. And I think that's like amazing. And I think that's very inspirational for all the designers out there in whatever way you choose to do your product design career.
Totally. Yeah. Like the thing for me about teaching is like, I can really like empathize, with like my students, since I literally like did the things that they have to do now and that I'm teaching, right? Like this, so like going through like learning how to make a portfolio, like redoing your portfolio or like working on it for the first time. And there's a lot of empathy there. And, I think I can relate to that.
Right. And I think that's a huge reason why like being a teacher and teaching something that so personally is really, really effective.
Like something in academia that I've been learning that I didn't know is like a lot of people who end up teaching like might not necessarily have that like product experience, like working on the product. So like having an instructor who like has worked on the product like really is able to contextualize a lot of those experiences for the students. So I know that's something that Brad valued in me, that I have like the industry experience. I just think that's like super valuable.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. I was actually just chatting about this with my team, like kind of similar, is how we sell the design project. And so I'm the main salesperson. And I think why it's so successful. I'm not a salesperson, like I'm a designer, right? But because I know what I'm selling and because I'm like passionate about it, I can relate to people in a different way than if you were to hire a salesperson.
Right. Yeah. It's that like relational element that just like gives it much more substantial, like that really helps.
Yes, exactly. So kind of similarities. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited. Yay, New York live. So let's dive into it. Before we jump into, book. So something special we have for all the listeners is that we have a discount code that everyone out there that's listening can get this code and be able to save how much? Tell us the details. So
it's a 35% off. If you use my name Conta, like you can CONTA, you get a discount on Peach Pit, which is this publication within Pearson, which is the company publishing the book. So you have to go to Peach Pit's website and then use that code and you'll be all set. So
perfect. So yes, 35% off. Peach Pit will give you the code and the link below, and you guys can save some money and be able to read the amazing book stories guide that you are putting on the world. So, okay, well, perfect. So before we talk too much, before we get into the book, which is what I really want to dive into, I want to kind of hear how things are going. As senior product designer at Amazon Music, you had just started, or you were just starting. How's it been going? What's like learning experiences? How long have you been there?
Right. Yeah, totally. So we're coming up on about a year. So I started August of 2023. And things are going well, like I'm learning more about like building a product at like such a large scale. So like the other places I've worked at, these are big places, thousands of people employed at these places, but there's thousands of people just in our org within, Amazon, which employs what, like 180,000 people, like just like a lot, maybe more. I don't know the full number. I think we're like second largest. I think Walmart's like technically like the largest employer in the world, but there's like those numbers shift, right? So, but yeah, so trying to like fit into that and make sure that there's all sorts of alignment and there's all sorts of processes that work and operate at that scale. So I think that's like been one of the bigger learnings for me of like, I can do the design. I've done it in a bunch of other places, but like, can you do the design like with everyone else and make sure it all fits into that and fits into like the product experience? Then you have all the customers, like there's so many different use cases, people using it and everything else. So, yeah, I mean, it's good. Yeah.
So what is your day to day? Is it like a combination of like meetings and like deep design work?
It really is. I think last time I said tapas, right? Like, like just the career tapas, like it's that and like an individual job, like, so some days like today, like I have a meeting, we talk about some designs with like the whole team, and then I go away and I do some deep thinking about those designs. Sometimes it's doing research, so like understanding what customers want or how they think about your designs after you like show them. Sometimes it's like talking with product about like figuring out like the strategy of like where you want to go with the feature. Sometimes it's like working with developers to like build it and bash bugs, make sure it's built to spec, you deliver those specs. It really is all over the place. So there's never like a today is like a day like any other day. It's like everything's a little different. Which I like.
I mean, I think that's one of the like a beauty of working in product design is I feel like every day is a little different, which is fun.
And I need that. Like I can't have the like clock in, clock out. Like just I can.
Yes, for sure. So I guess my question is for the listeners out there that are maybe looking to join a really large organization, or maybe they're even in a large organization. Any like tips or tricks that you've learned just past year that might be helpful?
Yeah, I think sharing your thinking is really important. So you don't necessarily do that at like smaller places because you're moving so fast, or like there's like maybe like 12 people on your team. I'm just making up a number, but like a small set of people on your team that know the ins and outs of everything. But like, because it's so big, I'm working on a side of the product that while a lot of people do like come to that, from a user's perspective, it's like one of the main screens of the product. People don't necessarily know how it works and all the edge cases and use cases. So like documentation is really important there, or at least like showing how you got to an answer rather than just saying this is the answer. And then involving people on that journey is really important as well. So that kind of came up today where like, one learning for me is like, maybe I need to do that a little bit more than I have been. So that they can be a little bit more involved in the thinking and seeing where that comes from and how I got to a conclusion. So like socializing that is like really hard at like a large org, and you have to like do a lot of work towards that.
Totally. I like what you said, and I think showing your work is super important, getting everyone on board to follow that journey with you, because then you get buy-in and people, you get opinions and all the things come with it. But I'm sure at this super large organization, everyone's so busy doing so many things. So how can you have people follow along with the journey? How can you give them what they need? I mean, that's always the challenge for us. But I think that's an interesting thing to think about.
Like I've had to do that before as well, but like not to this extent. Because it's so much larger. It's like a city.
Like
literally, like there are cities, right, that are this big or smaller even than the amount of people that Amazon employs. So,
crazy. No, that's awesome. Okay. Well, now we get to your book. That's what I'm really thinking about. So I would love to kind of hear, I have a lot. Oh, my brain's everywhere. I have a lot of questions, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about the premise of the book. What is the book about? Let's start there.
Absolutely. So for me, this book is like, how do I do design? Like what is that thing? Like how do I perform it? Like how do I actually do it? Like a lot of the books that I've read in the past are very heavy on like theory. So it's like, oh, this is like what a process is, and like this is how you do it generally. And then but it loses a lot of I don't want to say substance, but like you just don't necessarily like you go away from reading it and you're like, oh, how do I do it? Like you just read about this theory and you're really excited to apply it, but then you don't necessarily see an example. So what I wanted to do with this book is, maybe instead of art and science, like theory and practicality would also maybe be a good name for this book, but I like art and science more, which I'll get to in a moment. But really what it is like, here's a theory or a framework or a practice. Then here's an example of like how that practice is applied. Then the third layer is, okay, now you do it, like go do it yourself. Like I provide exercises throughout each theory or subchapter. and then I did it. So you can look at what I did. So like you get these 4 layers of like, okay, not just the rule, but the application, but you're going to apply it and have applied learning, which I think as an educator is extremely important because then it like sticks a lot better. There are like studies that show this, but also in my own practice. I've noticed this. And then also like, oh, but I just want to see like examples.
Yeah.
So I give those examples as well.
Yes.
Yeah. But you don't have to like do what I did and I show it to you after. So you're not influenced by it. So like really you're like not supposed to like look at that section until the back of the book. That's where it is.
Right.
So like just do it. And then like after you've done it, maybe even done a couple, then go see like what I did for those and like you'll see the divergence because my answer's not right. You know, like it's an answer.
Right.
It's not the answer.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so background for everyone is Anthony and I had lunch a few weeks ago and I dove a little deeper with him and like the fact that it's like a step-by-step guide is so awesome. Like I'm so excited for that because I think that's something that's missing. Like something that I always say is like, how can you apply these thinking? I think that's like a huge educational thing. And I've never like done a course or done anything where I feel like I had like something tangible to take away and that I really felt like I learned it and I could apply it.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're taking this concept and you're trying to like allow people.
Right. Yeah. I want to like invite you in. I want it to be like a roadmap. You know, the people that do this may not have ever done design before. This might be like the first time they're doing it, or maybe they've like done parts of design, but like don't know other parts. So having this like perspective on like, you should do these steps probably in this order. I say that you don't have to, you know, there's like a little bit of nuance within each of these steps. That's just like how design is, but like, here's like a way that you could approach this much more approachably, really. Like you can do it with these steps. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think that you showing your own work in the back of the book, like, I feel like us visual people would really like to see an example. Like it's really powerful. And there's so many people, like my co-founder who's like a data nerd and like obsessed with the business side of things. I'm always like, he's like, this is my idea, go do it. And I'm like, but I need an example. I don't know. And so I think having something tangible is so powerful. Yeah.
And I think where that really clicked for me was when I was at General Assembly going through the boot camp. We had instructors and like the instructors like explained the concept. I was like, oh, this is really helpful. And then like we'd go do the work. Like, wait, what are we doing? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So like our instructors realized this and they actually like showed us examples from projects. And we were just like, oh, like that's like you can see it concretely rather than have it abstractly. And that's like super important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's not that we need to see it because we want to copy it. It's like helping us get, it's like research, it's design. It's like, oh, we need to understand it, see how other people do it, look at inspiration to get to the next stage.
In the same way that you would make this for stakeholder and be like, here it is. Exactly. Like that's the thing that we would do here too, right? Like
1,000%.
Do it. Yeah.
Yes.
And the other piece that I said I was going to get back to is like the art and science element of it. So I think this field, like a lot of fields, you know, a lot of things like require right brain type of thinking. So I think like the fact that this is like artistic, obviously it's like design, it's very visual, but there's also like a science to it. Like there are steps, there are procedures that you can do, theories and statistical evidence that you can gather, and like a lot of things that you relate to science that really come to play in this field as well. So like showing both of those, like bringing that together feels like an integral part of this book.
Yeah, and I like that you called that because I think that's design in general. It's like people think of it, some people are like, oh, it's visual, it's only visual. And then people that come into the industry might be like, oh, it's really data heavy, and it really is a combination of both. So I think you're taking these high level concepts and you're combining it, and it makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually what really scared me about like going to the bootcamp in the first place was like this concept of like visual, like being like so associated with like the design fields. I was like, I can't do a wireframe, you know, like that. That was terrifying to me at the time. But then I attended like an info session and got to speaking to some designers, and they were like, well, actually, like the wireframes are definitely important, and they are. But like the ability to like craft an argument and like explain your point and back it up with data and research. And these are things that I've done before, like a lot. So I felt really good about those pieces.
Yes.
And I'm really glad that I had that conversation, because then I might not have entered this field if I didn't know that it's more than just visual. It is more than just art. Like there's like more to this than that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And what's really funny is I have the exact opposite. So I went to school for design. Like I always was like doing something with my hands, and I graduated with a graphic design degree. So it was that. And like moving into product design, I was like, you want me to throw together a website? I got it. You want me to think about data? I have no idea what to do. Right? Like I'm like, I don't know. But I think it's learning both sides of it.
Right. I guess we'd make a good team then.
Right, exactly. Combining. That's super interesting. I love that. Okay, so I want to talk about like how you came up with this format.
Sure, yeah. So I've been heavily influenced by my teaching, with my mentoring, with teaching at CUNY, now Pratt. So, I'm really heavily influenced by the Nielsen Norman design thinking model. And a lot of these models are similar, but I really like Nielsen Norman's, the way that they visually represent their model and their steps. And I feel like each of the steps that they have like really plays into the process that I have, so like we'll see if I can, fully get off the top of my head. Define, empathize, ideate, prototype, test, implement. There we go. Yeah, those 6 steps, and each of those steps are actually a chapter in the book. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the first chapter is like, hey, what's UX? Like, what's UI? What's like product design? Like, what are these things? Cognitive load, which is probably like my favorite chapter or subchapter in the book. I love that theory. And then 2 to 7 are those 6 steps that I just mentioned. And then 8 is like, okay, but like, what am I doing now? Like, okay, well, we can go in the industry. Here's some jobs that you can look at. You can make a portfolio. All the exercises you just did actually can be a portfolio for you if you want to tie that together. It's up to you.
Yeah.
And then like some like, how do I work with others? How do I receive feedback? Like those are some of the other chapters in there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so a couple questions. One thing
Sure.
you didn't really mention that you just touched on is that you can take this book and you can actually create a portfolio.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's kind of an important part. I'm glad you brought it up.
And that's awesome because I feel like a lot of people leave school or whatever, and they might have something little, but they don't have like a full project. Right. And it's like, whatever you learn, how can you apply it? And you're actually giving them the steps to go in and create.
Yeah, that's right. So I offer up a prompt at the like beginning of the book, near the beginning. And it's like, hey, like you could use this prompt to like frame your work. Like all these exercises work with this prompt. They also work with another prompt if there's like a project you want to work on. Or if you like do all the exercises again, you could just like use your own prompt or whatever. But here's a prompt. We're going to work from this, or at least I will. You can follow along with this if you want to, and you'll see like how I did it. But that prompt is like pretty open-ended and allows you to explore all the techniques.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then that could be a case study if you like write it and put it into one.
Right.
For some perspective on like how to do that and how to like choose a platform to host it on, if you want to do like a Squarespace or like a whatever, really, or even like a PDF portfolio. But
yeah, I mean that's amazing. You get to go through these steps and you get something tangible to show for it and get a job. Like
and it's all opt-in, by the way. Like you have to, like you can enjoy these theories and just like bring them to your work or like bring them to your practice. Like maybe you're like, oh yeah, like how do I do a survey? I forget, and like you want to do like you want to zoom in on like one piece of the puzzle. So trying to like match multiple learners.
Exactly. And I think that's something important too. If your book is not necessarily in a chronological order, like maybe for a full, but if you have something specific you want to dive deeper into, you can go back to your book, you can go back to this chapter, you can go back and reference it in a way.
Yeah. So like you could be in the middle of a project and like want to do the end, or like, oh, like I'm going to do this project again, or like I need to update it. Like it's like agile, like it's like you can move around, not agile in the software term, but like,
right. Yeah, totally. No, that's great. Right. That's great. And so something else you mentioned is you just talked about your favorite chapter or subchapter.
Oh yeah.
Tell us why.
So I love this concept of like cognitive load. Like, do you know what this is? Or so there's this concept that like there's something called cognitive load, which is like how much information that we can process like any one time.
Yeah.
So like there's like first there's like sensory memory, like what do we perceive, what do we hear, like what do we see? So like right now, I see you, and like we're having a conversation, I hear words and all sorts of stuff. So much of that like makes it into like our working memory space of like we have to like understand what this is. So like we get inputs, which is the information, visual, audio, whatever, and then our brain like processes that information, and some of that processing like recalls from like long-term memory what things are, and some of it recalls from short-term memory and recycles it there and either commits it to long-term or like shoots it out of your brain. So you forget it entirely. And then like, right. So a lot of my stuff just goes that way. Yes. But so this whole process is like, you can only understand so much at one time. And this really matters for like designing experiences, because if I'm bombarding you with a lot of lights and sound or even just information, you get cognitively overloaded. So an example that I have within that section is like, you ever like go on Netflix and like try to like watch something?
Yes.
And there's like thousands and thousands of pieces of content. And this is no knock to any of the people in this chapter, by the way. Like these companies are very, very successful. But for that idea, and this could happen on any streaming service or, listening to music, whatever, like trying to figure out what to eat for dinner, like this is a thing that, because you're just bombarded by so much information, you could like shut down and like not, and then just like, okay, I'll just like order seamless again. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
so like that concept is like really interesting because it applies to more than just design for me, like digital design. Like it applies to like life and just like daily decisions that I make, you know?
Yeah.
So I just didn't know there was like a word for it. Think of it as like a glass of water and like you're overflowing it.
Right.
And versus like you have to move some of the stuff out of the water before you can like fill it up again.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
Right. And think about like we're solving for that as designers. Like everyone's bombarded with 10,000 things.
Right.
So how can we make everyone's life a little bit easier?
Right. So there are like UX rules that are like, you know, like don't have like more than 7 choices because like people can't like really handle that. You know, like you should give them like 3 choices or like 5 max. You know, like there are like certain rules that like laws of UX that apply in those scenarios.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in this chapter, you're also giving like tips and tricks.
Yeah, exactly. So like the Netflix example, if we, you know, since I pulled that one, like Netflix used to have, I think they got rid of it, but they used to have this shuffle button.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, you don't know what to watch, like you hit the end of the queue and you're like, all right, just like random. And then like that's just like a way to alleviate that problem. And Netflix put that at the bottom to solve this problem. Like they're aware of this cognitive load problem. So like they're trying to like fix it, you know, which is why we now see like updates on the top shovelers that they have, like their top carousels, which is like very contextualized to you or like trending content.
Right.
Yeah, rather than just like a list of stuff.
Right. And I mean, let's talk about YouTube, like the birth of it, right? Like that is where it came from. And then obviously there's all like the drama and everything comes out of like you're getting sourced this information. Are you seeing all the sides? And then people get down the rabbit hole and then all of the ethical implications that come with it.
Right. And this is why like algo training is so important for you. So you can like reduce your load, like not see as much as you want to see. And that's what companies have to like really get that right. In order to maintain that stickiness. So like these are like very well-known problems by these companies that all relate back to this concept of cognitive load.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds fancy.
It does. It sounds really cognitive load. I like it. I like it. So what was this process? I guess like why did you want to write a book and how did this process go?
So I've been doing a lot of writing. So I write a lot on Medium, for example, like a blog site. And you know, I started doing that actually. GA like really nudged me in that direction because they thought writing about your case studies is really helpful. It is. You should do that if you can. You know.
Tip.
Yeah, it's a little tip. Author's note. You know, so like I've been doing that a lot, and I was like, okay, I have all these lectures, I have all this like educational content that I've been preparing that I own, and I was like, okay, well, can I do anything with that? So I started writing, and I thought that I'd release them as articles, but then I started shopping the book around, went to Pearson, they were really interested in the book. So I worked with them very heavily in order to craft it to the book that we got today. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember from lunch, you were like, it was a lot. There's a lot of it's a lot of
amazing editorial team. They're just like really, really like making sure all the words are like perfect and making sure that but making sure the author's intent is still there, like really good peer reviewers who really helped like provide industry perspective. You know, software engineer, we had a couple other designers like weighing in, a researcher, just making sure that like the content is like appropriate, you know, and like actually reflective of like the industry, and then just like great like graphic design for the book itself, and like, you know, just like all around I didn't know what to expect, but I was blown away, which was great.
That's amazing. I mean, I feel like you were like, I'm going to write a book, and you just started it and you did it. Right. And so like, I think that's a great learning for everyone. There's so many things that maybe we don't know or we're scared about, but you just got to jump in and look, you literally wrote a book and you're being published, and like, that's so cool. And you didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. And I never grew up saying, oh, I want to write a book. I just really want to write a textbook. That just like wasn't, you know, on my radar. But I think over the years, like all the education stuff just like led me towards really wanting to share this knowledge, and like I think people can really benefit from it. So
1,000%. And so another kind of relation I have from you telling me more about the book is your background in gaming.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it kind of feels almost like a game, like you have steps and a guide, and like
you can opt in, you know, like you don't have to go on these side quests, you know, that I have of like making all the different you know exercises. But if you do, you get a big achievement at the end, a portfolio. That's a pretty big, you know,
there are
there are. My learning style is kind of just like opt in, you know, like here's a thing. You could listen to this if you want to, or you don't. It's up to you to decide whether or not this is valuable. Oh, you do want to listen to this? Great. Here's like other stuff you could do. here's some exercises. You don't have to do all of them, you have to do any of them. But if you want to, like, I think learning is like an opt-in, like, make your students like care about it, and then like show them the value of it, and then they decide whether or not they want to do it. What's that adage of like, like teaching someone to like love the sea? Like you're not like making a sailor, you're like teaching them like the love of the sea, and that makes them a sailor. You know what I mean? Like I'm definitely butchering the metaphor there, but it's that intent.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're taking your book and you're going to be teaching it. It's basically, this is the guide.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of that, of like the lessons learned from the book are going to be woven into the curriculum. Being in person with these students is going to change some things that makes that like a curated experience for them. So it's not just like a one-to-one thing, but the principles in this book, yes, are definitely applied to the curriculum, and have been applied to other curriculums as well.
Right. And that's awesome.
Which like helped hone the book as it is. Like by teaching it in other places, I like learned what does and doesn't work, came up with some really interesting exercises. I think one of my favorite exercises is the affinity map. So an affinity map is like, you take a bunch of user interviews. For people that don't know, like you take a bunch of user interviews, which is you talking to people and like getting insights from them, and then like you write down on post-it notes like key insights from those conversations, and then you map them to like draw correlations between them. So what I did was I took a real world data set that I did for like a different project, and I wrote down all my key observations, and I invite the reader to do that. So like you can actually go into FigJam and map it. Like you have a data set that I provided you, like what insights do you see? And then the reader does that, and then they understand and they can have that exercise.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really good for my students.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what we said about like you being the end user and how powerful it is.
Yeah, because like I know, like I'm designing kind of for me,
right?
Or like, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
A question I have for you is, a lot of people that I've talked to, interviewed on the podcast, are mentors.
Okay.
And so I know you being successful, becoming like a teacher at an institute and everything. What advice do you have for mentors that would like to be better at mentoring or teaching or growing?
So like my growth path as a mentor, like it really started from does the student like me? Like what about this relates to me? It was very like internal, but I've since like become a little bit more confident in that space, and it's like, oh, it's not about me. They're coming to me, but not about me. You know what I mean? So like that was like, right. Like it was like almost like I don't want to say it was a trauma response, but like that idea of like, oh my God, I got to make sure this is like the value that I'm delivering for the student,
Right.
So like being able to postpone that and like know that I'm doing that allows me to like open it up to be less about me. So I would, in the past do that in my earlier years of doing it. And then it then shifted to, okay, like I feel more comfortable about this, but I'm like giving you advice. So like I'm telling you what to do, which is fine. Like some people do need that. And then on some projects they are saying, so what should I do here?
Yes.
But now I've come away from that because it's not about saying, do this. It's about helping them figure out what they should do rather than telling them what to do. Like a show, don't tell like type of policy. So now what I do is it's much more like, okay, what do you bring to the table? What are you curious about? What do you want to know? I'll point out any gaps that I see. If like you really don't have anything, or if you do have something, but you want that and I can sense that, or like I really think there's something you should know, but really it's like, how can I help you? Like not like this is what you should do. Have you thought of doing this? Like it's a shift. It's subtle, but it ends up being less prescriptive.
Right. It's like the way that you phrase it is really powerful.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's key. And so, yeah, I feel like all of these learnings and everything that you've gotten out of this path of becoming a mentor has led you to this place of writing this book and putting it in a language where it's like, hey, you can do these things if you choose.
Right.
This is what I suggest, or you can go to wherever you want and find your value.
Jump around. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do this in this steps. Like there are some techniques that you can do at certain points. Like, do you have to do a competitive analysis at the start of a project? Maybe not. Maybe you look at the competitors after you've designed something because you don't want to be influenced by that. Like these things are like amorphous, much like the process, but there is like a process. There's like general things that you do. You can't test something without having something, right? You should talk to your users before you make things. Like these are like, there's certain like milestone events.
Yeah.
And that's how like the book is structured.
Yeah. And so what in your book, what was maybe the most challenging part about writing it, or maybe section? We talked about your favorite chapter.
Yeah.
Your least favorite.
My least favorite chapter. making stuff is hard.
Yes.
So like the exercises that I had to do where I had to like design a new product, like that took some time. So like I did the research and the research led to something and like so on and so forth. But then I had to like make wireframes, which as we talked a little bit about before is one of my like, ooh, I don't know. The spots where I can be, blank slate scares me.
Okay.
So
Yes.
like not having like that directionality of like features and having to come up with those features and like really is like a true blue sky moment. And I've
Yeah.
seen a bunch of students struggle with this of like what project should I work on? Like they know the steps,
Right.
but they don't necessarily know like how to like give that directionality of like what am I going to work on? And then okay, I know that these are problems. What is that solution? Like that can be really hard. And that was probably the hardest chapter for me, writing designing a solution, the exercises for that.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Like some people love that. It's like, oh, I could do anything. And then like,
Right.
but then I'm like, I could do anything. And like,
Right.
yeah.
It weighs on you.
Right,
It could
exactly.
be like-
For me, like the possibilities weigh on me.
Yeah.
Whereas like having direction helps. So
Right. Well, and you've kind of tested this out and tried this out, and you said students struggle with this part too.
They do,
so
yeah.
you're trying to write to solve this problem that you have and
Yeah.
that other people have.
right.
So how can you write something that you struggle with to help people not struggle when you struggle?
Exactly right. Yeah.
The loop.
Just right there, cognitive load.
Yes, right. Exactly. That's great. I want to talk about collaboration. So
Sure.
you said one thing that the book specifically is you got to work with like
I did.
editors and all
Yeah.
of these people. And how was that process, and how do you maybe compare it to the design process?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest parallels is like different perspectives. Like an editor is going to look at something completely differently than I'm going to look at. They're going to think about how it fits on the page and the layout and like the tone of voice. I'm just trying to communicate content, like,
Yeah, right.
so like having that editorial like slant of like, you should say it in this way. Oh, you're inconsistent with like, this term versus that term. Like you should bring that together. Like it really adds this like level of polish to the book that I think is helpful and can also help with design itself. So like, for example, we have a copy team, working on the product that we work on. That copy team informs like how to say, in the tone of voice of the customer. That's really helpful. That's not something that I fully am aware of or I'm thinking about, or I don't necessarily see it in all the places that it occurs in our product. So having that perspective, these different perspectives, help with your blind spots. Like
Yeah.
having a researcher review my book, he provided so much insight into like the terminology that I was using and all the trends that were happening and like the various studies that I could reference. So like those like little spots show me what I'm missing without me knowing that I'm missing it. So I think that really helps in the design process as well. Like I think building products is a team sport. Like yeah, absolutely. Like you can't have one person build it all. Like that's not possible. Or if that person like doesn't have like anything else going on, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Totally.
or like if the product's like small scale relative to everything else. So like you just need that team. You need those perspectives. You need those skill sets and those tools and that knowledge.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure it's like also a level of getting rid of your ego and really like
Yeah.
building, writing the best thing you can, because there's probably a lot of things you didn't know, and people are coming in with, oh, this is not the right lingo, this isn't the right word, and you're like, oh gosh, I've been using this term or as an example. So
Yeah, right. I am not like I'm not reading the book, right? Like I'm writing the book. Other
Yeah.
people are reading it. So the way that they perceive knowledge is something that I need to be aware of. And I might perceive it in one way, but like when other people read it, they might see it in a different way. So having that perspective is really valuable.
yeah, no, that's a super interesting insight. I've always been curious like how that process works.
It's fun, I write a thing and then they like review it. They're like, look at all these things. I'm like, oh yeah, I should edit that.
Right.
And then I do, and then the process continues.
Right. So one question I have for you is product design is changing rapidly.
Sure is.
Today is
Oh yeah.
something new, right?
Yeah. What's on AI today, right?
So you're publishing a book, it's printed, it's not going to change
Yep.
right now. Like, how does that feel? What is that?
It's a little intimidating, honestly. Like, so I was looking at some of the references, like the screenshots, and I was like, oh, you are starting to add these features and functionalities to your product. Like, so there's an example in the book that has like Barnes and Noble versus Amazon, and Amazon has like the buy now, like the one-click buy. And at the time that I took that screenshot, I was like, oh, Barnes and Noble doesn't have this feature, and then they've added it. But at the time they didn't, so like they were behind in that perspective. But like these UIs change. That's the real challenge of writing any book. You go back and look at like, they'll make me think like, did those were references taken at that time? So that's why that book had to get updated, and that's why like this book may have to get updated in the future, and that's okay,
Right. Totally. Totally. It's
a snapshot in time.
Yeah, I like that's a good way to look at it, because like I think that would be intimidating for me. Like, oh gosh, I do all this research and put this together, and then everything's gonna change. But it's not. It is you're teaching. It's like a groundwork that you're setting. So it's
much like any book is like a snapshot of the culture of its time, or a movie, or what have you. Like
definitely, yeah. And it makes me think of the design of everyday things. That's like one of the most famous, most popular.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what year was it written? I don't know. And you look
no. I think it's like 2000s.
No, I think they have an update, but I think it might be from.
Was it actually the 80s?
Someone's gonna.
We'll fact check.
We'll fact check. But like reading the book, you see pictures, and it does feel old. They're like talking about the mobile phone, for instance.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But there's something. Yeah, but it's still relevant. Like the messaging of what they're saying.
Yeah, that's the book that like also got me into design. Like the design of everyday things. I love.
Yes.
That reading that, like just the tea kettle on the cover.
Exactly.
For those of you that haven't seen it, it's like a tea kettle that faces you, so when you pour it, it pour like all over you.
Yeah.
So like that would hurt, and it's
right.
Good.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like that concept of like, I think, and Norman doors is like a very familiar concept in the industry, which is, as you know, like a push or a pull. Like there's a door over there, and I was like, is it a push or a pull? It was a slide. I don't know. Hadn't encountered that one before, so that was really interesting.
But it's not your fault, even though we always think it's our fault.
Yeah, but it's not your fault. Trust me. Yeah.
That door. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. I think that like this was super fascinating. I'm
Sure,
really excited to read your book.
I can't wait till it comes out.
We have a discount code, everyone, so definitely jump in there. I think that's super exciting. I guess my question for you to kind of wrap it up is like, what's next for you? Where are you going from here?
Sleep, probably. I don't know. I think a lot about that. I've been thinking about that recently. Like, so the teaching I like, and the mentoring's great, and I think that's the thing I could do as agnostic of where I am. So right now I'm, really in the work. Like at Amazon, I'm very much like working on the features and like doing the day-to-day work of building that. I think the future for me, and I don't know if this is 1, 3, 5 years from now, is stepping away from that a little bit. Like maybe it is at an individual contributor level of like a staff or some sort of like principal role that like helps others do the work and like sort of unblocks and does like a little bit more of that strategy than like the Pixel Perfect of it all, a little bit less about that. Or it could be at some sort of like directorial level of like, managing several people. I'm not actually sure if I want to manage or if I want to still be involved in like making the thing.
Okay.
Because I love making the thing.
Yeah.
But I find more and more with like the mentorship that I've been doing, like I'm starting to get a little bit more of an appetite for that management side of things. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm sure I'll keep figuring out.
Yeah. I have a little note about that. For you, we can definitely chat about this more. So
yeah, I'd love to.
Leaving behind the design part of it took me. It was like a 5-year transition. I was like, okay. I can't let go. Like this is who I am. It's my identity. Like I always want to be a designer. It was such a struggle.
Especially as a graphic designer, like you were literally doing the design. Like that must be really hard.
Yes.
So how did you cope?
I had to cut the cord because I felt like the value I was providing, the value I could be providing for my company was to be more strategic. Yeah. And by me doing customer work, which I actually still do, I always find it important to at least have one customer. Mm-hmm. But so I still get to cover that slightly, but I feel like the value I was providing was not doing pixel perfect designs. Right. Like it was the strategy and like all of my learnings. And so I think what was interesting is I handed off my designs, but I actually, what's interesting is I don't miss it because I feel like I'm able to mentor and grow a team that can do it. And so I'm still providing that like oversight. Right. And helping people, which is exactly what you do, what is mentoring. So you still get to provide that value without being in the day-to-day.
Yeah, no, that's great. So like it sounds like you might have done a 90-10 or like some percentage that you still help do the work and you get to like be involved in what you love and what you've always wanted to do. But like for the most part, you like unblock so that others can do that work. So you force multiply yourself, but you're still within that space. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. That sounds great. Like a hybrid,
right?
With hybrid work. It's just yeah.
It's like I can't let go. It's like I still have to be attached in some way, and it's something. But
that gives you the perspective because now you can empathize with like your team and like you understand how they do the work and like you can you also like have to like develop your skills, or else you're going to be unable to like talk about Figma, talk
Exactly.
about AI and like prompt generation. Like you just need to know these things in order to communicate effectively as a leader. So
Exactly. That's
yeah.
and I'm hiring more people, and design leaders are I'm hiring design leads to take over more of leading designers. And then they're like, oh, but you want me to still do design work? And I'm like, well, I think there's value in that, and we talk about it, but being able to, like we talk about, if you're doing it, you can lead and
totally
relate in such a different way.
Yeah, so like a 70-30 or an 80-20. Like I would say right now I'm at like a 90-10.
Right.
You know, but 90 is of like the IC, 10 of like the mentor manager type of thing, and maybe like a 50-50 would be like the next place I want to go. You know, like not, I don't think I'd ever want to be I don't say ever, but I 100-0 would be hard for me, I think.
Right. I mean, you're a designer, that's like in your blood. So I think finding that balance, but not being afraid to give it up a little and test it, because it was surprising how much it was hurting me more than helping me. I was stuck because I wasn't growing.
Well, I mean, props to you for like recognizing that, and then also being able to let it go. You haven't let it go. You haven't let it go. You've just put it down. They're different.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think that's an interesting goal. I mean, it makes sense for you and where you're going, and
I think
teaching
so.
And
so it feels like.
Right, but I mean, who knows?
I don't know.
But it's something you could test and play with, and slowly give a little bit more. Just a little bit. Yes, perfect. Well, awesome. And thank you so much, Anthony.
Thanks for having me again. I love this. So
I know, I'm so excited for your book. And stay tuned for the next time we connect.
When I write the next book.
Right, the next book. Whatever. We'll follow along on what's next.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.